Traffic Safety Administration is investigating 23 crashes where drivers may have been using autopilot.
저희 주변 사람들이 저한테 많이 물어보는 질문이 특히 테슬라 운전하는 사람들이 내가 테슬라 오토파일럿을 사용을 하고 운전할 때 차 사고 났다. 그러면 상대방 잘못도 아니고 분명히 테슬라에서 잘못인 것 같은데 사고 난 경우에 누구 과실인지라고 저한테 물어본 적이 많습니다. 근데 그럴 때는 제가 항상 답이 it depends. And why does it depend? The one important factor as far as who's at fault and who's responsible is the vehicle's level of automation, their autonomous driving classification at the time of the accident. And what that essentially means is, as far as automation, I'm talking about how much the driver is involved in driving the vehicle at the time of the accident. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration currently gives 6 classifications, 6 of them, with regards to autonomous self-driving cars. First level is level 0. And most of the cars here that you see on the freeways and on the roads have a level 0 autonomous driving classification. And those are the cars that basically just have cruise control. So if you're driving on the freeway and you have standard cruise control, there's different types of cruise control. We're talking about standard cruise control. If you turn on your cruise control and you're driving and a vehicle cuts in front of you, the standard cruise control will rear end that vehicle because they would not be able to distance themselves between vehicles. So that's level 0. And then there's level 2 where it's called driver assistance. And there are typically 2 types of driver assistance. For the newer models that are out these days, you have the adaptive cruise control. And what that does is it utilizes radars and cameras to be able to have adaptive cruise control. So when you're driving the highway and a car cuts in front of you, it'll be able to distance itself by slowing down and then moving forward. And most of the cars on the road that are newer model have that, along with the lane departure. And that is where you have a vehicle when it's about to exit a lane, what it ends up doing is the steering wheel will either shake or it'll start beeping. And that's level 1. And then you have level 2. Level 2 essentially is one where most of the Tesla vehicles have software and definitely the hardware that has level 2. And that's basically, we call it semi or partial automation. And on autopilot, what it allows you to do is it allows you to speed up, slow down, and change lanes without the driver being involved. But what Tesla does is you have to always have your hands on the steering wheel. And if you don't have your hands on the steering wheel for a certain amount of seconds, we call it the torque of the steering. So if the vehicle is trying to maneuver to stay in the middle of the lane and they don't feel your hand on the steering wheel, the autopilot will actually shut off. And so that goes to answer your question. Right now, Tesla is in level 2 automation. And because you're required to always have your hands on the steering wheel, even if the vehicle, because of the lack of software, is not able to detect a car coming and you end up hitting the vehicle, it's actually the driver's fault. And so the reason why I say depends is because Tesla, like many other car manufacturers, they're going to go from level 2, 3, 4, and 5. And let me kind of talk about these different levels so you understand, because that may change to a yes later on in the future. And so level 3 is conditional automation. It means that from one starting point to a destination, the vehicle will actually be able to drive. The vehicle will be able to understand the surrounding world around it. And so if you have a vehicle in front of you and it's, let's just say the speed limit is 55 miles an hour and that vehicle is going 20 miles, that vehicle that you're driving will be able to detect that it's slower and it will actually be able to go around it. And so that's the conditional automation. And you have level 4. Level 4 is called high automation, and that's where essentially the vehicle will be able to drive on its own. What will essentially happen is it'll be able to drive on its own. However, in a certain, they call it geofencing. In a certain area, like let's just say a city block, they'll be able to have areas where you have to drive at a certain amount of speed, and if you go outside of that, the vehicle will not be able to drive on its own. And then you have level 5, which is full automation. And that means anywhere you drive, the vehicle will be able to drive by itself. As a matter of fact, later on, they're saying that you will not even have a driver at all. And so level 5 automation is where it gets very interesting, because if you don't have a driver at all, the question is, who's at fault? This is where I believe Tesla and different manufacturers will have a lot of lawsuits filed against them. And it'll be not for just car accidents, but it'll be for products liability. And so you can either have a software defect where a Tesla, for example, is not able to process all of the information to be able to see its surroundings, or it could be a hardware issue where it's a defect of a camera or a radar. And so I believe that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits filed against those companies, and then there'll be a lot of recalls. And once those things are fixed, obviously the amount of accidents will go down. But at that point in time, if somebody asked me, I was involved in an accident, I was driving a Tesla without a driver, who's at fault? I think at that point in time, Tesla and manufacturers would be, but for right now, it'll just be the drivers. Okay, so in summary, essentially, if you get involved in an accident and you're driving on autopilot on Tesla, and it is the vehicle's fault because there is a defect, for example, who's at fault? Unfortunately, it's the driver who's at fault, because you always have to have your hands on the steering wheel. So for you Tesla drivers or any other vehicles that have automation level 2, please make sure you drive safely and understand that you should always be in control of your vehicle. So please be careful. Hire the best.